Hello, YouTubers. It's Stephen here with a thank you and with a chat and possibly a joke. First of all, the housekeeping. I'm smoking my adored sort of pipe that I've got there. I love the work on it, the rustication. It's beautiful to hold. It's a 7LE and it smokes like a dream. And in it I'm smoking Corrie's special blend Peanut Buttercup. It's not a blend that I would have chosen for myself in many ways, but it's adorable. It tastes exactly like what it says, Peanut Buttercup. And yet it's still got that nice tobacco emphasis and taste. Now the thank you. It's a strange packet I received because you know some of the codes that we send packets across the mail with, you know, tea and craft goods. Well, this one was marked tea, and I was most surprised to find on the top of the packet tea, which was lovely. Thai tea mix, but also underneath the tea, shortcut to mushrooms. It's something that I really am looking forward to trying. It's from Piper Sam's 100 Sub Gore, and you may remember that he said if we chose a tobacco that he had in his cellar, he would send some to us, and I was lucky enough to sort of say that this tobacco was what I liked, and he had some in the cellar, and the first 3 people to do that got a sample. So I'm really, really thankful to you, Sam. I'm thankful for the tea as well. We British, you know, are great tea drinkers. You may be wondering why I am dressed. Oh, by the way, have you seen my dickie? Would you like to see my dickie? There's my dickie. My dickie bow. You've got to be careful with an Englishman when he offers to show you his dickie. There. I'm dressed like this because many of you seem to think that I'm some kind of English gentleman. I always get referred to as English gentleman, which is very nice, which I hope that you mean that in a traditional way of a gentleman, an English gentleman. But the English gentleman, the gentry, would really not recognise me. I'm not sure they'd even speak to me. You know, I come from the wrong end of the track, the other side of the track and further on. Don't Twitter, dear. Oh, she's terrible. She knows my past, you see, so she knows what I'm talking about. But having said that, I have been fairly good as a con man. We once thumbed a lift, and it was one of the gentry, a lady, and I'm not going to give her name, but she was of the aristocracy. Carolyn got into the back of the car and I got in the front beside her ladyship. And as we were driving along, she started speaking to me, wondering what family I came from and whereabouts were we and all that kind of thing. And by the end of the car ride, we'd arranged that I should go hunting with her husband or she said I could, and I decided not to go. But poor Carolyn sat in the back, kept her mouth shut, because she's got one of those Yorkshire accents. But I think she was rather surprised at how well I got on with her ladyship. Were you, Carolyn?
Definitely.
I think one of the advantages of having an accent like mine is that in some ways you can mix across the board, because although I have some accent words that I use, when I'm talking like this, I think most people think of it as more received English, the BBC English, or the Queen's English as it's known. But then when I relax, maybe after a few drinks, the different accents come in. The Norfolk accent, which is one of the most difficult accents for people to copy, and drives me mad when we're watching a film about Norfolk and they do a South Country accent. The only thing good to come out of the South Country was well, no, that's not true. But one of the good things to come out of the South Country was a lorry driver who I met. And we were unloading his wagon at the garden centre. And he was surprised by something. And he said, well, bugger-eye me, which I thought was a lovely thing to use. So I use that occasionally. But I've got a bit of a Norfolk accent. I've got a bit of a Yorkshire accent at times, you know. I'm not as good at it as a Yorkshire speaker, but it occasionally slips out. And the words that we'd use, like side the table, which means clear it, or mash the tea, which means make a cup of tea. I once came across a man who came to the garden centre to buy some plants. And spent a long time just talking to me and listening to me. And then he told me everywhere that I'd lived, which I thought was truly, truly amazing. And he was able to do that just by listening to some of the words that I used, how I spoke, and that kind of thing. And, you know, I mean, there's difference between America and England, you know, and I think I've said this before, you know, where you ask for an eraser and we ask for a rubber, you know, which gets you into all sorts of trouble. Those kind of things. I'm pleased, I suppose, that I'm referred to perhaps as an English gentleman. It's better than being referred to as toad bugger or the old bastard. There was a mill manager in Guiseley and around that area, and he said he knew where he was in the country by the way people talked to him and by what people said about him. And he said, in factory, they call me toad bugger. In office, they call me Mr. What's his name, love?
Can't remember.
Oh, Mr. Berg will say. That isn't it. It's and then when I'm down in London, they call me Sir. And he was a real Yorkshire mill owner, as hard as granite.
Arkwright.
You know, Arkwright. One of the things that I had to deal with, and I don't know whether I've told you this as a vicar, was I had a funeral of a very, very rich, well-known Yorkshire mill owner who had sadly passed away. That's where we were burying him. But the solicitor rang me up, his executor, and said, I'll bring round his landlady and she can tell you all about him. And she came round and she told me all about him, what a lovely man he was, how generous he was, how kind, and would do anything for anybody, and, was sort of a paragon of virtue. So I made all these notes about this dear man, wondering how I was going to describe this sainted man. And the solicitor and the landlady left.
Not landlady.
No, the housekeeper left. And about an hour later, I got a phone call from the solicitor. And he said, "You haven't written a sermon yet for that funeral, have you?" So I said, no, haven't even looked at the notes yet. I was going to do it later. And he said, "Well, don't say anything that she said." He said he only had one bloody hobby, and that was making money and keeping it. And he said he was a right miser, hated everybody, except his housekeeper, who he was sleeping with, apparently. So, that was that one. Anyway, I've gone on too long. I just want to say again, thank you to Sam, and thank you to Corey for his samples of tobacco that he sent me. I'm really enjoying smoking them. And I thought I'd end with a joke. It's a joke about Viagra. There were two old chaps talking, and one of them said, "Oh, have you noticed they've brought out some dissolvable Viagra now?" It's what you do is you put it in a cup of tea and drink it. And his friend said, "Have you tried it?" He said, "I have, yeah." And he said, "How did it work?" So he said, "Well, it didn't do anything for me, but my biscuits were solid as a rock."